Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, "Student Doesn't Consider My Teaching Worthy of Her." I work as an amateur dance teacher on the side of my studies. And in that line of work, I've met some wonderfully motivated students, whom I've helped out to the best of my abilities to get started on their competing career, but also quite a few nutcases. The worst one was a woman who absolutely insisted she was an extremely talented dancer, being held back by her partners and refused to put in any work whatsoever whenever practice included anything she didn't consider worth her time, such as basic technique, improving rhythmicality or partnering skills. After all, she was already way better than her partner, so why bother? In reality, though, she was barely better than beginner level, despite years of practice, and definitely did not have any talent whatsoever. And that's okay, you don't need to be great at something to do it for fun. And I'll gladly teach anyone interested in learning without caring the slightest bit about whether they are good at it or not, because there's no feeling that beats seeing one of your students improve. Now, this woman was always trying to guilt-trip me into giving her favored treatment, claiming I was the reason she didn't improve faster. That I didn't give her enough lessons. That I failed at teaching her partner to be worthy of her. And even claimed that I should become her dance partner because she had enormous potential for growth and was already at almost the same level as I was. Not true, of course. Someone on a beginner level is not quite comparable to someone trying to get their foothold in semi-professional events. I, of course, did not appreciate her behavior one bit, because she always had this condescending tone as if she considered herself to be the one at charge during my classes or lessons. Never mind the fact that someone trash-talking their own practice partner is just about the most detestable person I can imagine. You are supposed to work with, not against each other. I myself am not a big fan of the "customer is always right" policy, but will admit there's some truth to it. So despite feeling like it, I did not straight up ban her from attending my classes. Instead, I waited for her to begin one more of her rants about her own excellence. I just waited for her to finish, and then cue some malicious compliance. You know, you're right. I have not been able to help you improve at the same rate as my other students, and I do feel bad about it. Yes, so how about we keep some extra lessons on Sunday? I can't really afford to pay, but it's about improving your students, not pay, right? Technically correct. I do give generous discounts to some of my students I know have low income but put in a lot of work and love the sport. She's neither low income or a hard worker though. No, I don't think that would help. I have come to believe that my teaching methods just aren't suitable for you personally. No amount of lessons from me could make a difference. I think the best way would be for us to part ways. You should find yourself a teacher that fits you. With that, let's end today's lesson early. You won't have to pay for it. But I interjected her. Now I know that you've enjoyed your practice here and wouldn't want to leave it behind. And as you said, you have your goals set high. So you should find yourself a professional teacher. I'm just an amateur, after all. Thank you for your time. I wish you good luck in your future endeavors. After that, she was quite visibly in shock and couldn't gather herself to properly answer. So I simply turned to the couple who I had the next lesson with and told them we could start early, thus taking away any chance she had at disputing it then and there, knowing full well her pride would not allow her to beg me to turn my decision around later on. Alas, I have not seen or heard of her since, which I am very grateful for. I absolutely hated every minute I had to spend in her presence. The next story is called, "Enjoy Doing My Work." I work as an engineer, but I wear many hats, including dealing with billing the client. We bill our time to the projects we work on. My current project was coming to an end in May. This all started in April. And I was slated to start a new one in June. Now, my project manager receives a bonus for job completion that is directly tied to the profits made on the job. So, it is in his best interest to remove excess staff from the job early so they are not draining anything from the remaining funds in the budget. Anything left over from the staffing budget goes to the profit pool. It is somewhat important for me to mention that this project is located 10 minutes from my house, but the new one is 2 hours away. So I asked my manager to keep me on for a month longer so I had time to vacate my current apartment and move to my new one. At the time he said sure, no problem. To my dismay, behind my back, he transferred me off a week after my request. I didn't even hear it from him. I heard it from my new project manager. I was confused and upset, and I decided that while I wouldn't confront him, I certainly wasn't going to make his life any easier for him. One of my remaining tasks was to bill the client for the final month. Not a difficult task, but submission is through the client's online portal, which is an antiquated and confusing system to work with. On top of that, the client is a real stickler about making sure the process is correct and that we don't miss deadlines. There are draft submissions, review meetings, and final submissions to worry about, and each step has its own deadlines. Additionally, we have consultants that need to be paid for April's work. I emailed him and asked who was going to take over this task. I explained to him that it was a lot of work and that I'd just probably stick around for at least a week or two more to show him the process. His response was exactly as I expected: "It's just billing, it's not rocket science. I don't need your help." So, to start my malicious compliance, I did exactly as he said. I left it all alone, forwarded every email related to the project to the manager and waited patiently for the ramifications to kick in. 2 weeks into May, I started getting included on nasty emails from 3 sides: the client, who was getting frustrated that the project manager wasn't following the process correctly and had missed multiple deadlines; the consultants who hadn't received their pay; and upper management, who didn't understand why, after 3 years of everything running smoothly, they were now receiving threatening emails and calls from the consultants. I got called in by the regional vice president, asking why I hadn't properly prepared my manager on the process. Turns out that when the vice president questioned my manager, he had blamed me. So I showed him the email where I offered to teach him and he rejected. The vice president called my manager and chewed him out right there and then and asked why he couldn't hold on to me for a month more. It wouldn't have even been that big of a cost to the project. After that, he asked me to step back in to fix the issue before the end of May. I told him I could do it, but I'd definitely have to work overtime to make it happen. I got blanket approval for it and worked overtime all week plus weekends, and I could expense my mileage to go to meetings. I racked up 30 extra hours at 250% pay and 40 weekend hours on double pay on top of my regular 40 hours per week. I found out today that part of the overtime will be docked from my manager's bonus. So in his quest to earn a tiny more in his bonus from removing me from the project, he ended up losing a lot more. The last story is called "You Are the Boss." So this was years and years ago, back when I was working as a land surveyor. Basically what we would do is go out with a laser on a tripod and shoot it at a bunch of mirrors on a stick, and because math, that would give us an extremely precise map of an area. My dad was the one who trained me in the trade, and because I have a very analytical mind and this is basically geometry, I had a talent for it. Though honestly, I wasn't all that fond of the job. Good at it, sure. Just not fond. So one day, with my dad's help, I get put on a survey team with a guy we'll be calling Jay. He was technically the crew chief, which meant he was technically in charge. Jay was a dyed-in-the-wool redneck. He listened to conservative radio, thus forcing me to do the same, drove a beat-up old pickup truck, lived in an apartment complex that somehow had a rusted-out car sitting in its front lawn, and had a stubborn streak Texas tall and fueled by his utter surety that he knew better than every person else. I never heard him say anything to confirm it, but if I had seen a Confederate flag on his truck, it would not have been out of place. Jay didn't like me. I loathed him. We would often meet up at 6 or even earlier to get equipment loaded and set out on a job. I'm not a morning person. I'm definitely a night owl. And while I'm always awake, alert, and on the ball, while on site, the car ride out to the site would often lull me to sleep. Jay hated that. Every time I would start to doze off slightly, fighting to keep my eyes open while ignoring the constant drone of southern fried conservatism flooding out of the radio, Jay started screaming his head off, telling me to wake up. If he had to be awake, I was sure going to be awake too. 10 minutes of him ranting and he'd finally shut up, only to start over again when my head drooped an hour later. This is an example of his attitude toward pretty much everything. He was right. I was wrong. Suggest differently and he'd hem and haw until you just gave up. So on to the malicious compliance of this story. We were out on a massive job. We had to survey an entire strip mall complex. One of those deals that takes up an entire block to itself, with lots of little alcoves and corners that made sight lines difficult. Lots of setting up, shooting a few points, setting a traverse point, then breaking it all down again to move to the next point. We knew already we were going to be at it all day. So we broke everything out and got to work. So as the crew chief, one of Jay's responsibilities was that he would plan our traverses. He would choose the vantage point he thought we could get the most relevant data recorded from, set the traverse, let me shoot it in, and then we would switch positions. I'd set up the instrument and data collector on the traverse. He would get a backsight from our old setup location so the instrument could orient itself and knew what direction it was facing. And then he would go around with the prism and I'd take the readings. About halfway through this massive job, I've just broken down the instrument and I'm heading to my next traverse when he stops me. Hey, you forgot to shoot in that archway. I should point this out for non-surveyors. You may have noticed that as crew chief and prism man, Jay is the one who picks what to shoot in. So when he says, you forgot, what he meant was, I forgot but I want to shift the blame onto you anyway. Go back to the last point. We need to shoot that in. So off I go, back to where I had just come from. I set up the instrument and get on the walkies. Hey Jay, I'm dialed in. Just need a backsight. You were just there. You don't need a backsight. Just shoot it in. I can't shoot it in without a backsight. If I don't get the orientation, the rest of the job could be pivoted. He has all the swagger, but I doubt he understood 3 whole words of what I had just said. He was crew chief on seniority, not an actual mind for the math. Basically, since I had broken it down, the instrument didn't know which direction it was facing. So it would pick a direction at random and just assume it was facing that way. Which means any points we shot in, including all traverses we shot from that point forward, would be pivoted around that point at a random and arbitrary angle. You idiot. Just do what I tell you. Take the shots. So I shrugged. Technically, he was in charge. He was the one who literally called the shots. He was the one responsible. So I took the shots and we carried on, with me knowing everything was being increasingly transposed as we carried on. Cut to the end of our day. We had finished up pretty early compared to when we thought we would be getting out. The way we did things is we would shoot the points, then upload them to our company's server through a desktop with a mobile modem. This was exclusively my job because Jay was a monkey. So we pack up all the equipment, get in the truck, and I start uploading our points file. Jay likes to take off from the job site immediately, even though he's supposed to wait for word from our techs, confirming they got the points, but by a stroke of luck, he decided today he wanted to relax with a cigarette before we left. Usually, he'd smoke as we drove, but I guess he wanted to just chill. In any case, we're actually on the job site, not on the road, when he gets the call from the office. He answers the phone, expecting permission to get off for the day. Hello? The phone makes muffled muttering sounds. What points? Additional inaudible muttering from the phone. I don't understand. What's wrong with them? My ears perk. I know exactly what is wrong with the points. Through straining my hearing and knowing roughly what the tech is about to say, I can barely make out a few words. They were control points and over 400 yards. Now one might be wondering what control points are. Well, I shall now edify thee with an explanation. You see, when surveying a large area, standard best practice is to do it in a large loop. You tell the data collector that point 001 is at position 1000, 1000, 0 and then collect the other points in relation to that arbitrary point. So when you circle around the area being surveyed, you collect the position of that same first point again as your last shot so the techs know roughly what kind of error margin drifted in while you were traversing. And needless to say, when you're dealing with measurements with precision down to 1/1000th of an inch, an error margin of 400 yards is completely unacceptable. Now what I could have done is ask Jay to let me talk to the tech, inform them that Jay refused to take a backside at one of the points, and tell them to take all points above that point and pivot them around another point by a certain degree. All numbers that I had memorized. That would have lined up the control points, compensated for the error completely, and we would have driven home having done a good job. But I couldn't do that, could I? That would have indicated Jay was wrong. And Jay is never wrong. So I held my tongue and tried not to smirk. He refuses to believe our points are wrong. You must have uploaded them wrong. You idiot. Do it again and do it right this time. Of course, it's my fault. It was always my fault in his opinion. So I uploaded the points again and the tech informed him that the points are still off. Jay seizes the laptop. 20 minutes of the monkey stabbing at the keyboard ensues with him having to get the very patient tech to guide him step by step through the incredibly simple process of dragging and dropping the points file. And again, the tech informs him the points are wrong. He is incensed. So minutes later, we're piling out of the truck and grabbing all the equipment again so we can set back up on the point where he messed up on with a backside this time and reshoot every single point in the back half of the job we just completed. I didn't mind. I was being paid to watch Jay curse and fume, with us both knowing I was the one who had warned him about the issue. Of course, he keeps blaming me for the mess up, but I just take that as an occupational bonus. In the end, Jay got bawled out by the big boss for wasting company time and money. My dad told me his check got docked for the screw up. Me? I got overtime. After all, Jay was the one responsible for the accuracy of the data. I was just the monkey pushing buttons on the instrument. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.